You think someone like you has the right to interrupt a disciplinary meeting? The words hit the table with a force that didn't need volume. Harvey Gaines, standing at the head of the room, didn't raise his voice he never needed to. His authority wasn't questioned in this wing of the company. Until now. The internal meeting had been called to review concerns regarding team performance. But everyone in the room knew what it really was. A public reprimand. Monica Hayes, a quiet and diligent QA engineer, stood near the far end of the table, shoulders tense, hands clutching a stack of printed deployment logs. Harvey was in his rhythmic-accusatory tone, half smirking, weaving together terms like inconsistency, lack of accountability, and missed deadlines, with just enough venom to leave bruises that wouldn't show on a performance report. And then he crossed a line. "I don't know if this role's too much for you, Monica," he said, his eyes narrowing, "but some people just aren't built for this kind of pressure." The silence was instant. And then came the voice. "I reviewed those logs last night," said the man at the end of the table. Calm, deep, steady. She didn't make the error. The deployment variable reset itself during batch sequencing. Heads turned. Some subtle, some not. Raymond Cole, though, in this room, he was only Jerome Allen, the new QA engineer transferred from Houston sat with his hands folded on the table, gaze fixed on the middle of the conference room. His face, marked by age and experience, gave nothing away. He didn't look angry. He didn't look intimidated. He looked resolved. Harvey turned slowly. His eyes scanned the room, then landed on Raymond. "You're new here," Harvey said, "barely through orientation. And you think you get to speak in a meeting like this?" Raymond didn't blink. "I spoke because the facts matter." A few seats down, Logan stiffened. Dana glanced away. Harvey smiled then. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "You know what I think? I think you've misunderstood your place." The meeting wrapped awkwardly. Harvey made some excuse about reviewing internal alignment and left the room with clipped steps. Monica didn't say a word. She just gathered her things, eyes focused downward. Raymond sat still until the last person had filed out. By 10:42 the next morning, his access badge was dead. The HR meeting was brief. "We've reviewed yesterday's incident," said Melissa from People Operations, her tone clipped and practiced. "Your conduct disrupted a formal performance discussion. Challenging a team leader's authority is not conducive to a healthy working environment." Raymond said nothing. He didn't protest, didn't defend. He'd seen enough. As he stepped out of the HR office into the quiet third-floor corridor, the polished tiles beneath his shoes echoed louder than any voice. He passed a framed poster on the wall that read, "Integrity, courage, teamwork." For a moment, it almost made him laugh. Raymond had built this company ecosystems from the ground up. In those early days, there were no slogans, no HR scripts, no layered management structures. Just code, sweat, and the belief that people mattered. That integrity wasn't a performance metric. Now he had just been fired from his own company. Not for misconduct, not for incompetence, but for standing up, for defending the truth. And in that sterile HR room, he had seen it clearly. This wasn't just a case of bad management. It was deeper. A culture had formed, quietly and dangerously, where those who looked like him were expected to stay quiet, where leadership disguised bias beneath professionalism, where loyalty was demanded but never returned. Raymond stepped outside. The wind of Midtown Atlanta met him like an old adversary. No more disguises. No more silence. What he saw in that meeting wasn't just an insult. It was a warning shot from a system that believed itself untouchable. But the system had forgotten who built it, and Raymond Cole was done watching. If you believe Raymond did the right thing by standing up for the truth, hit the like button to honor his courage. And tell us in the comments, have you ever spoken up when it could have cost you everything? Your voice might inspire someone who needs it today. Raymond didn't go home right away. He walked, past the glass doors of the building that still bore the name he had signed onto every incorporation form, past the rows of suited men and women sipping overpriced coffee, too busy to notice him, past the corner where he used to park his first car back when he worked late nights writing the core code for the platform. Ecosystems had once been a dream. Now, it felt like a ghost dressed in polished concrete and corporate slogans. By the time he reached the small apartment he'd been renting under the name Jerome Allen, his phone buzzed. A message from Elijah Crawford, his oldest friend, his co-founder, the only person who knew the truth. "You good?" it read. Raymond stared at it a long time before replying. "Not yet, but I see clearer than I have in years." He tossed the phone onto the worn couch, sat down, and opened the notebook he had been keeping since the beginning of his undercover return. Every page held observations, questions, moments of quiet cruelty he had witnessed during his 3 weeks as Jerome. Notes scribbled in haste. Monica called out in public meeting, eyes red after. Logan apologized 3 times for asking a fair question. Harvey mocks in private Slack thread. He'd suspected the culture had shifted, but he hadn't understood the full extent until now. People didn't just feel undervalued, they felt unseen. And worse, some of them, particularly those who didn't fit the mold, were being silenced on purpose. He flipped to the last page, wrote the date in the corner, and added one more line. "They only saw my skin and my title, never my voice." The next morning, Raymond dressed early and headed to a diner on 14th Street. The kind of place where the floors creaked and the coffee was poured without asking. He took the same booth he used to sit in before Echo had an office, back when he and Elijah used to dream up what the company could be. Honest, lean, purpose-driven. Now, it had grown into something else, something armored and sterile. Elijah arrived late, wearing a gray blazer over a t-shirt with a faded university logo. He slid into the booth without a word, glanced at the notebook on the table, and then met Raymond's eyes. "You're not surprised," Raymond said. "Number, but I was hoping I'd be wrong." Raymond nodded once. "It's worse than we thought. Harvey's not just a bad manager. He's a gatekeeper of a system that rewards silence. He's protected because he keeps people in line." "And you got fired from your own company for standing up?" "Correct." Elijah gave a dry laugh. "You always said you wanted to build something different. Now you know exactly what it's become." Raymond leaned back. "So the question is, do I fix it quietly, or do I tear the mask off and show them who Jerome really is?" Elijah stirred his coffee slowly. "You didn't put yourself through all this to walk away. You put yourself in the fire because you knew something was broken. Now you've seen it with your own eyes." "I just wanted to understand," Raymond said softly. "But that meeting, what Harvey said, it wasn't about Monica's performance. It was about putting her in her place, about reminding me of mine." There was a long silence. Then Elijah said, "So don't walk away. Walk back in." Raymond didn't answer, but a storm had begun to rise behind his calm demeanor. Later that afternoon, Monica sat at her desk on the 4th floor, staring at the screen. She couldn't focus. Every line of code blurred into itself. Jerome's CNTMT now was like a hole in the room. No one had said what happened. Officially, he had resigned for personal reasons. Unofficially, everyone knew what it was. Logan passed by her desk and paused. "You okay?" She nodded, but didn't mean it. "He didn't deserve that," Logan said quietly. "No," she said. "He didn't." They both glanced toward Harvey's glass-walled office. He was laughing with someone, gesturing over a presentation on his laptop. "Have you noticed how he only targets certain people?" Monica whispered. "New hires, juniors, people who look like us," Logan finished. Monica closed her laptop. "I don't know who Jerome really was, but he had guts. He said the truth out loud, even when it cost him." Logan nodded. "He made me feel like maybe we weren't crazy." That evening, Raymond returned to the apartment and drafted an email. Not to HR, not to legal. To himself. To Raymond Cole, CEO of Ecosystems. Subject line: Follow-up. Required. Internal investigation findings. Body: Attached are documents highlighting cultural discrepancies and personnel abuse observed within the QA integration unit. Further review recommended prior to next quarter's strategic realignment. He attached scanned pages of his notebook. Dates, observations, names. Not accusations, just facts. Then he hit send. He closed the laptop and smiled. It was time to remind them who built the system they thought they controlled. The email didn't need to reach anyone. It was never meant to trigger alarms or formal replies. It was for one person, Raymond himself. A symbolic act, a line drawn. The moment a man stopped gathering evidence and started preparing for confrontation. The next day, Ecosystems carried on as if nothing had happened. Harvey Gaines strutted through the integration floor with the bounce of a man who'd cemented his power. He greeted executives in the hallway, laughed at his own jokes in the break room, and casually mentioned during the morning huddle that team alignment had improved lately. No one mentioned Jerome. Monica tried to. Twice. During a meeting about backlog cleanup, she asked if there would be a replacement for the open QA seat. Harvey waved it off. We're optimizing for efficiency, less distraction, more throughput. Then later, when discussing upcoming regression cycles, she dared to bring up the logs Jerome had reviewed, the ones that proved she wasn't at fault. Harvey interrupted, smiled condescendingly, and said, "We've moved on from that." But she hadn't. That afternoon, she opened an old Slack thread, one of the last ones Jerome had commented in. He dropped a line late at night, after helping her debug a deployment failure. "Good work, Monica. The system didn't break. It exposed itself." She stared at that sentence for a long time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then stopped. There was no one left to say it to. That same hour, on the 21st floor far above the floor where Monica sat under fluorescent buzz, Raymond Cole walked out of a private elevator. No hoodie, no cover, just himself, tall, calm, undeniable. His face bore the same quiet resolve that once helped him pitch to investors with trembling hands and a borrowed blazer. Now, that same stillness was colder, sharper. The receptionist at the executive suite blinked twice before recognizing him. "Mr. Cole, no one told us you'd be in." "I know," he said. He didn't wait for an escort. He walked straight to the corner office that still technically bore his name, though others had filled it with decor, titles, plaques. He didn't sit at the desk. He stood by the window, overlooking Midtown Atlanta, watching the city move like a machine built on repetition. Then he called Elijah. "It's time," he said. "You sure?" Raymond nodded, though Elijah couldn't see it. 3 p.m. tomorrow, conference room, 17B. Invite Harvey, Melissa from HR, and 2 of the board reps. No subject line, no context, just my name. Understood. The next morning, Harvey saw the invite just as he was closing his laptop to head for lunch. The room number meant executive floor. The sender? J. Cole. His stomach tightened. At first, he thought it was a mistake. Maybe something about the security clearance Jerome had fumbled, but then his eyes locked on the name again. J. Cole. The J didn't stand for Jerome. It stood for Raymond. He barely slept that night. By 2:50 p.m. the next day, he was already waiting outside room 17B. Suit pressed, laptop open, notes prepared, but he had no idea what to expect. At 3:02, the door opened, and Raymond Cole walked in. Harvey rose halfway, confusion and tension locking his knees. "Mr. Cole? Too? Didn't realize." "Sit," Raymond said. Harvey sat. No small talk, no handshakes. Melissa from HR sat across from them, stiff and quiet. The 2 board representative solder men in tailored suits flanked either end of the table, unsure whether this was a disciplinary meeting or something much bigger. Raymond opened a leather folder and slid a printed transcript across the table. "Read it." Harvey leaned forward. His eyes scanned the lines of a private Slack message he thought had long disappeared. "That kid thinks he's a hero. All he did was embarrass me. Har's got it handled. Culture fit excuse always works." Harvey's face went pale. Raymond didn't blink. "You dismissed a qualified woman in public to protect your ego. You used HR like a shield and made people believe their silence was survival. You fired a man without realizing he was the one person who could end your career in a single meeting. 2 didn't know. You didn't care," Raymond interrupted, voice still level. "You saw a black man speak truth and assumed he was disposable. You saw Monica question process and labeled her a problem. You saw fear, and you nurtured it." Harvey's voice shrank. "If I may." "You may not," Raymond said, then turned to Melissa. "Effective immediately, Mr. Gaines is to be reassigned. Compliance oversight. Boston office. No reports. No leadership access. Required weekly ethics debriefings. If there's resistance, inform legal. I'll handle the board." Melissa blinked, then nodded. "Understood." Raymond stood. "This room doesn't exist. What was said here stays here. I'm not here for a scandal. I'm here to fix what broke. If I ever hear about you silencing someone again," he leaned forward, eyes hard, "I won't send a calendar invite next time." He left the room without another word. Downstairs, on the 4th floor, Monica was packing up her things after another long day when her Slack pinged. New message. From r.cole@ecosystems.com. I heard your voice. I never forgot it. Let's talk tomorrow, floor 21. Her breath caught. Her hands shook. She didn't know what was coming next, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something stir beneath the weight of surviving. Hope. Monica barely slept that night. She kept staring at the message on her screen, reading it over and over until the words blurred. I heard your voice. I never forgot it. She didn't know what rattled her, more the sudden reappearance of the man who had defended her and vanished without explanation, or the realization that he had never truly left. The next morning, she arrived earlier than usual, wearing a simple gray blouse and black slacks. No makeup, no bravado, just a quiet resolve pressing against her ribs. She took the elevator to the 21st floor, somewhere she'd never been, somewhere people like her were rarely invited unless something had gone wrong. When the doors slid open, the space looked nothing like the 4th floor integration wing. Here, the air was still and warm, carpets thick, art on the walls. No flickering lights or dented file cabinets. Monica walked slowly, passing closed office doors and polished glass, until she reached room 2103. The door was already cracked open. Raymond stood by the window, back turned, looking out over the city skyline. His posture was the same as it had been that day in the meeting room, tall, composed, unreadable. Come in, he said without turning. She stepped in and closed the door behind her. I wasn't sure if you'd actually reach out, she said quietly. I wasn't sure either, he replied. Then he turned to face her. His eyes, warm but weary, studied her for a long moment. But I owe you the truth. Monica sat slowly across from him at a small round table. There were no laptops, no files, no corporate decorations. Just 2 cups of coffee, still steaming. I wasn't Jerome, Raymond said. My name is Raymond Cole. I founded Ecosystems 23 years ago. She blinked. You're that Raymond Cole? He nodded. Yes. I stepped away from daily operations 2 years ago, but I returned, quietly, to see what Echo had become. And you chose us? Her voice caught slightly. The integration team? I didn't choose you at first. I chose anonymity. I chose the forgotten wing of the company because that's where truth usually hides. Monica looked down. Her fingers curled into each other. I saw what they did to you, he continued. Every time you questioned a system, they made you smaller. Every time you were right, they erased you. I tried to stay quiet, she said. But after a while, the silence started to feel like complicity. He nodded. And then you spoke up. And so did I. And I got fired from the company I created. They sat in silence for a long moment. Why are you telling me all this now? She finally asked. Because it's time to rebuild. And I can't do it alone. Monica's eyes lifted, surprised. What are you saying? Raymond leaned forward, his voice lower. The board knows what happened. Harvey's been reassigned. I've resumed control of operations. But a reset isn't enough. Culture doesn't change because the CEO gives a speech. It changes when people who've been ignored become architects of the new foundation. He reached into his blazer and pulled out a small envelope, sliding it across the table. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a business card, simple, white, her name printed on it in bold. Monica Hayes, Culture Lead, Integrity and Ethics Division. Ecosystems. Her breath hitched. I'm not qualified, she whispered. You are, Raymond said. Because you lived it. Because you understand what this company forgot. She looked at him, eyes stinging now. What if they won't listen? They will, he said gently. Because now, I'm listening too. And I'm not leaving again. Monica didn't answer right away. She stared at the card, her fingers trembling. Then slowly, deliberately, she nodded. Across the city, Harvey sat in a small glass cubicle at the Boston branch office. His new role compliance oversight analyst was stripped of authority, absent of direct reports, and cloaked in corporate irrelevance. He filled out forms all day, read ethics manuals he'd once scoffed at, attended mandatory reflection sessions. He'd tried to push back at first, tried to argue, but no one at headquarters responded. Raymond's shadow loomed larger than he'd expected. In an odd way, the silence that followed wasn't punishment. It was justice, and it was suffocating. Back at Ecosystems HQ, changes began quietly. Old posters with vague slogans were taken down. Anonymous reporting tools were updated. HR procedures were rewritten by people who had once been trampled by them. Monica began holding closed-door listening sessions, one-on-one meetings with team members who had never felt safe to speak. Logan was the first to show up. He sat stiffly across from her and said, "When Jerome's sorry," Mr. Cole spoke up, "I started to think maybe I wasn't crazy. That maybe being the only Asian kid on a team of 10 white engineers wasn't why I kept getting overlooked." "It wasn't," Monica said, "and it won't keep happening." He looked at her for a moment, then smiled. It was the first time she'd seen him do that in weeks. At the end of the day, Raymond walked through the integration floor unannounced. He paused at the edge of the room, letting the familiar hum of typing and quiet chatter fill his ears. Dana looked up, surprised. He nodded at her. "How's the Jenkins pipeline?" She blinked. "Stabilized. Thanks to the documentation Monica rebuilt." "Good," he said. Then, with a small smile, he added, "You ever think about leading a sprint?" She blinked again. "Me?" "Yes, you." Dana smiled shyly. "Maybe." He turned and continued down the hall. He wasn't trying to be everywhere now. He wasn't micromanaging. He was simply showing up where it mattered. Because Raymond had learned something in the silence of the 4th floor. Companies don't fail because the code is wrong. They fail when the people writing the code stop believing their voice has worth. And now, those voices were rising. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Raymond walked into the town hall planning session. Just 3 weeks earlier, this room had been a sterile formality: agenda slides, quarterly figures, predictable applause. But this time, he had no intention of staging another corporate theater. "We're not doing the town hall with suits and sound bites this year," he said flatly, placing his notebook on the table. The 3 senior execs present 2 VPs, and a director exchanged uncertain glances. One finally spoke. "Sir, the agenda's already drafted. Legal's approved the language. We have a few DEI highlights, some roadmap talk, and..." Raymond raised a hand, firm but calm. "We're going to do something different. We're going to tell the truth." He let that settle. The room fell silent. Later that week, invitations went out, not calendar blocks, just physical cards, slipped quietly onto desks. Main auditorium, Friday, 10 a.m. attendance expected. No titles, no pretense. There was no official subject line, no promotional email, just rumors. By the time Friday arrived, the building buzzed like a wire about to snap. Employees filed in slowly, unsure of what to expect. The auditorium, usually half full for these things, reached capacity by 9:50. There were no stage props, no brand slogans, just one mic, one chair, one spotlight. And then Raymond walked out. No suit, no scripted smile, just the same steady face that had once sat silently in a flickering QA room. "I want to tell you a story," he said, his voice low but clear, "about someone who joined this company not long ago." The room stilled. He was quiet, observant, showed up early, stayed late, noticed everything, including the moments no one else wanted to see. People leaned forward, others stiffened. He watched as one teammate, Monica, was blamed for an error that wasn't hers. He saw how she was dismissed in front of others, how the room stayed silent, how speaking up became a risk. Raymond paused, and one day, he spoke. Not loudly, not emotionally, just honestly, and for that, he was removed, silenced. A hush blanketed the room. He let the moment breathe, then said, plainly, "That man was me." It hit like a wave. Audible gasps. Eyes widened. Hands flew to mouths. A few people turned in their seats instinctively toward the back, where Harvey had once stood at so many meetings. But he wasn't here, and he wouldn't be. Raymond continued, his voice unwavering. "I didn't come back to test you. I came back because I lost trust in what I was hearing from up here. So I went down there, to sit beside you, to work beside you, and what I saw broke me." He stepped aside. The projector behind him lit up not with graphs or market share numbers, but with a phrase in bold white text, "Courage to speak." "This isn't a speech," he said. "It's a commitment. Starting today, we're opening confidential reporting channels directly overseen by an independent review board. No more anonymous inboxes that go nowhere. There were murmurs, but not the cynical kind. Something else. Interest. Relief. We're also forming a mentorship initiative, he went on, led by the people who lived through the silence and chose to speak anyway. He scanned the room. And we're redefining leadership metrics. No more bonuses for output at the cost of people. Starting next quarter, culture impact will carry equal weight. He stopped, letting those words anchor, then turned slightly toward the front row. Monica Hayes. She blinked, stunned, then slowly stood. Would you come up here, please? She hesitated, then walked to the stage, her steps steady but cautious. The room didn't applaud. Not yet. It just watched. Raymond turned to her and said, "Not as a boss, but as a peer. You were treated unfairly. You kept your integrity when no one else did. And you made this place better." He handed her a small envelope. She opened it silently. Inside, a card. Culture Lead. Ethics and Integrity Division. Ecosystems. Raymond looked back to the crowd. She's not here to fix what we broke. She's here to help us build something better. Then, the applause came. Slowly, tentatively, then stronger. It grew not because someone told them to clap, but because something in the room cracked open. A release. A belief, maybe. That change was no longer theoretical. Afterward, Monica stood backstage, still gripping the card. Logan found her, eyes wide. "You knew?" She shook her head. "Not until that day he stood up for me." "Man," Logan whispered, "I hope I have that kind of courage one day." "You do," she said quietly. "You just haven't needed to use it yet." Upstairs, Raymond stood in his office for the first time in months. He looked out over the city, then down at his old desk, the same one where he once mapped the entire back end for the first platform. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt clear. On his whiteboard he wrote 4 words. Silence was the system. Then beneath it, but not anymore. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something shift. Not just in the company but in himself. Not vengeance. Not even redemption. Just a beginning. A real one. The Monday after the town hall felt different. It wasn't loud. There were no fireworks, no dramatic speeches echoing in hallways. But something fundamental had shifted like air that smelled different after a storm. At Ecosystems, where silence had once been the safest currency, people began to speak. It started small. At stand-ups, junior engineers who used to speak only when asked now contributed without waiting. Project managers who once cut others off began to pause, to listen. Eyes looked up instead of down. Voices that had trembled now held just a little more weight. Monica noticed it first during her one-on-one with Dana, a quiet back-end engineer who rarely made eye contact. Dana sat across from her in one of the new Integrity Room sessions, quiet spaces set up across each floor for confidential reflection, ideas, or concerns. "I don't know how to say this," Dana began, hands fidgeting. "But ever since that town hall, I feel like I can breathe." Monica gave her space. "I used to write ideas down in a notebook," Dana continued. "Ways to improve the rollback system, better error messaging, but I never submitted any of it. I didn't think anyone cared." Do you still have the notebook?" Monica asked gently. Dana nodded, eyes still lowered. "I brought it today." Monica smiled. "Let's look at it together." That same afternoon, Logan walked into Monica's new office on the 21st floor, once Harvey's domain, now redesigned without any of the sterile bravado. Just plants, natural light, a whiteboard with the phrase, "Build with honor," scribbled across it. Logan held out a folder. "This is from the QA team. We've been talking. Some of us want to co-lead a peer mentorship circle. For new hires. For people who don't feel seen." Monica took the folder, flipping through the hand-drawn structure. "You did this on your own?" He shrugged. "I figured, if Mr. Cole could put on a hoodie and sit with us for 3 weeks, we could at least meet people where they are." Monica nodded, proud and quiet. "He'll want to see this." Logan paused at the door before leaving. "I never said it before, but thanks for being the one who didn't disappear." Monica didn't answer with words. She simply held his gaze and nodded. Meanwhile, on the executive floor, Raymond sat in a glass-walled conference room with 2 board members and Elijah. The walls were bare, the table plain. There was no catering, no branded mugs, no ceremonial polish, just intent. Raymond spread out the new leadership evaluation forms he'd co-developed with Monica. Each one had 3 core pillars: contribution, culture, and courage. "We're not rewarding output alone anymore," he said. "If you can't lead with empathy, you can't lead here at all." One board member leaned back, skeptical. "Raymond, I admire the direction, but some of our older clients are expecting bottom-line assurances. What if these changes make things slower?" Raymond met his gaze directly. "What slowed us down was the rot we didn't see, the whispers we ignored, the talent we drove out. You want speed? Protect trust. You want innovation? Stop making people scared to speak." Elijah added, "We've already seen a drop in anonymous HR complaints and a spike in internal suggestions. This isn't theory. It's working." The room held quiet tension for a moment. Then one of the board members nodded. "Let's do it. It's time." Later that week, Monica returned to the integration floor. Not for oversight, not to enforce anything. She came to sit. She found her old desk still unclaimed, still as it was the day she left it. She placed her bag beside it, sat down, and opened her laptop. Across the room, Logan looked up from his screen. "You're back?" Monica smiled. "For today. Just needed to remind myself where this all started. Un moment passé." "You think it'll last?" Logan asked. She tilted her head. "What?" "All this. The change. The energy. People actually listening." She took a breath, thoughtful. "I think it'll last if we protect it." He nodded slowly, then turned back to his code. In Boston, Harvey sat alone in a compliance cubicle, typing revisions to a policy document. No one called him by title anymore. His reports now went to a rotating group of ethics reviewers. He hadn't seen the inside of a conference room in weeks. No one asked his opinion. No one needed it. And in some strange way, it was exactly the mirror he'd never wanted to face. One afternoon, he opened his inbox and saw a company-wide email from Monica. Subject: The Courage Chain, a living archive of voices that changed ecosystems. Inside was a simple link, a digital space where any employee could share a time they spoke up or someone spoke up for them, anonymously, if they wished. No judgment, just truth. Harvey stared at the screen for a long time, then closed the email. Back at headquarters, Raymond stood once again at the window of his old office. He wasn't watching the city. He was watching the floors below, watching people move, stop, talk, lean into one another, walk with a little less tension. He took out a card from his pocket. It was the same one he had given Monica, except this one had no name on it, just 4 words, printed in small black type. "Your voice is enough." He placed it on the window ledge and left the office, because this was no longer just about leadership. It was about legacy. And this time, Raymond wasn't building systems. He was building people. By the time spring rolled into Atlanta, the atmosphere inside ecosystems had transformed in ways no quarterly report could capture. There were still deadlines, still production bugs and stakeholder pressure, but underneath it all, something deeper had taken root, the belief that people could speak and still belong. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Monica stepped into the small, newly converted story room on the 5th floor. The room was modest 3 chairs, a soft lamp in the corner, and a recording device in the center of the table. It had become a place where employees came to share their stories, their silences, their moments of risk. Some chose to speak anonymously. Others used their names. All were archived in what the company now called the Courage Chain. Monica pressed record. "My name is Monica Hayes," she began, her voice clear but soft. "And I'm here because one man said the truth out loud, and it cost him everything, but it gave the rest of us a reason to try again." She paused, not out of fear, but because her throat tightened with memory. Then she continued. "There was a time, not long ago, when I thought being quiet was the only way to stay. I thought speaking up would get me erased. And I wasn't wrong, but I also wasn't alone." She reached out, pressed stop, and saved the file. Later that afternoon, she joined Raymond in the old executive wing now called the Commons. He had chosen to open his office up to the team months ago, removing the door entirely and converting the space into a shared hub. There was a large board in the center, filled with handwritten notes and stickies, ideas, questions, even jokes. Raymond looked up from the whiteboard, dry erase marker still in hand. "Did you record your piece?" Monica nodded. It felt strange, saying it out loud again. He smiled faintly. Strange is often a sign we're being honest. She leaned against the edge of the table. "We've had over 300 submissions already. Some people who never said a word during meetings have shared stories that I don't even know how they held onto that alone for so long." "Because silence was safer," Raymond said. She nodded. "Not anymore." He set the marker down. "There's something I want you to see." He led her down to the loading dock area of the building rarely used since most operations had gone digital. A team of workers was unloading a set of crates labeled Community Installation, Interactive Archive. In the center of the space, carpenters were assembling a large structure, a curved wall made of steel and glass, with a single terminal embedded in the middle. "What is this?" Monica asked. Raymond looked at her with a quiet smile. "A permanent exhibit. Every Courage Chain story submitted gets etched into the digital display. Visitors can walk through, listen to the voices, scroll through real moments of change. It's not just for our team. It's for the city." She blinked, stunned. "You're making it public? We're not hiding anymore. What we went through, what we allowed, was real. And so is what we're building now. Other companies need to see it's possible." Monica took a step closer to the glass. In the center, already etched in clean lettering, was the phrase, "Justice doesn't require noise. It requires presence." R. Cole. She turned to him. "You never put your name on things before." "I never thought I had to," he said. "But now I realize if I don't claim the pain, I can't claim the healing." That evening, an internal email went out to all ecosystem staff. Subject line, "It's yours now." It was short, a few paragraphs. Raymond's voice, candid and steady. "I returned to this company expecting to find cracks. Instead, I found people holding the whole place together with bare hands and no thanks. I found voices that had been forced quiet, and truths that had been ignored. You brought them back. You made this new version of Echo real. As of next quarter, I'll be stepping back once again, not in retreat, but in trust. The leadership you need is already here. It always was. I was just the one who finally listened." It ended with a quote from one of the anonymous Courage Chain submissions. "No system should require silence to survive. If it does, it isn't worth surviving." In the days that followed, reactions rippled through the company. Some felt uncertain change always carried ghosts of the old rules. Others felt energized. And many, for the first time, felt like they mattered beyond their output. In the Commons, the old productivity metrics board had been replaced with something simpler. A white sheet pinned with 4 questions. Did you speak truth today? Did you listen with respect? Did you protect someone's dignity? Did you build with purpose? Each day, different hands added ticks, initials, even small stories. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. On Friday morning, Monica walked past the integration wing. The lights were brighter now. The air didn't hum with fear anymore. She paused outside the conference room where it had all started the day Harvey tried to shatter her voice. She opened the door, stepped in, and saw Logan leading a sprint review. Dana was sitting near the front, contributing actively. A new intern was scribbling ideas on a whiteboard. No one looked nervous. No one was shrinking. Monica watched for a moment, then turned and left without interrupting. They didn't need her there to make it safe anymore. As she stepped into the hallway, she saw Raymond at the far end, talking with a custodian about the community archive downstairs. He caught her eye, nodded once, then continued listening. She smiled. This was the revolution they had built, not with anger, not with noise, but with patience, presence, and an unshakable refusal to accept silence as the price of belonging. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and now it was theirs. 3 weeks later, the sun rose over Atlanta with the same soft promise as any spring morning, but inside ecosystems, something quiet and meaningful was underway. On the lower level of the building, a small group had gathered near the newly finished Courage Chain installation. Employees came in pairs and clusters, coffee cups in hand, shoulders closed. Some arrived silently, some spoke in hushed tones, but all were drawn by something deeper than corporate duty, an unspoken call to witness. Monica stood near the edge of the exhibit, watching as Logan guided a group of interns through the installation. They stopped at the central terminal, where an audio log played a soft recording of a woman's voice. It was Dana. "My name is Dana, and I stayed quiet for 3 years. I thought that was the way you survived in tech. Then one day someone said what I was too afraid to say. And for the first time, I believed I mattered more than the lines of code I wrote." Logan let the silence linger after the recording ended. No commentary, no discussion points, just the power of truth left hanging in the air. The interns didn't speak for a moment. Then one of them, a young black woman with thick braids and a nervous glance, said, "I didn't know people here said things like that." "They didn't," Logan said. "Not until now." Upstairs, Monica stepped into a new meeting, her first official onboarding session with incoming managers. 10 new hires, from various backgrounds and departments, sat in a glass-walled room with notepads and cautious eyes. But this wasn't the same orientation Echo had used for decades. Gone were the scripts, the slide decks, the rehearsed company values. In their place was something different. "Welcome," Monica said simply. "I'm not here to tell you what Echo is. I'm here to tell you what we almost became." She paced slowly, her voice steady. 3 months ago, this company looked polished on the outside. Strong numbers, stable growth. But underneath that there was silence. A silence we mistook for stability, and it almost cost us everything. She paused, then said the line she always kept close. "People don't leave companies because of the work. They leave because they feel invisible while doing it." The managers sat straighter. Someone scribbled furiously. Another just nodded slowly, as if recognizing a truth they'd long buried. "That won't be your legacy here," Monica said, "but you'll have to choose it, every single day." Across the building, Raymond had taken to walking through different wings without announcing himself. He preferred the routine of slipping into a team meeting unannounced, asking questions not about metrics, but about moments. That morning, he paused in the strategy wing, where 2 employees were standing near a corkboard, pinning up something new. "What's this?" he asked casually. One of them turned. It was Jenna, a product analyst. "We're starting a watch and listen wall. Anyone can pin notes about moments where someone protected someone else's voice, big or small." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "You're building a witness board." She smiled. "We figured if people could see the good, they'd start to expect it." Later that afternoon, Raymond joined Elijah on the rooftop Gardena space they rarely used before, now reopened for informal discussions and reflection. The skyline of Atlanta shimmered under the late light, golden and slow. "You ever think we'd get here?" Elijah asked. Raymond leaned against the railing. "Not like this. Not through the fire." Elijah chuckled. "I still remember you storming out of that HR room after they fired you as Jerome. You said nothing, just took your mug and walked." Raymond smiled faintly. "It was the first time I'd been invisible inside something I created. It broke something in me. But it built something else," Elijah said. Raymond nodded. "And now it's not mine anymore. Not really." "That's what leadership is," Elijah said, letting go of the title, holding on to the mission. Downstairs, a janitor named Marcus Quiet, middle-aged, usually unnoticed, stood before the courage chain. He had cleaned this building for 11 years, watched teams rise and fall, watched people vanish without ceremony. He reached toward the touchscreen and typed. "I remember when no one looked at me when I passed. Then one day, Mr. Cole asked me if I'd eaten. I had, but I never forgot the question." He pressed submit, and his voice too became part of the chain. That night, Monica stayed late in the Commons, walking past the corkboards, the open workspaces, the old office where Harvey's nameplate had once been. She paused at the table where her first Sprint notes still lived, laminated now under glass. She ran her fingers over the margin where she had once written, half in defeat, "Maybe I'm not cut out for this." She smiled. Someone had scribbled beside it later, in different handwriting, "You're not just cut out for it, you're shaping it." She turned off the lights. The building didn't go dark, because the light now came from everywhere. From conference rooms filled with laughter instead of tension, from whiteboards marked with ideas instead of silence, from voices once silenced, now inscribed permanently into the very architecture of a company that finally chose to listen. Justice didn't knock down walls. It rewired the rooms. It was a gray Thursday morning when Raymond returned to the 4th floor, not as Jerome, not as CEO, but as a man retracing the fault lines of where it all began. The hum of computers still filled the space, but the silence that once ruled here was gone. Conversations floated easily between desks, and laughter now lived where tension once hovered like fog. He stood by the entrance for a moment, watching, unannounced, unnoticed. And then Dana looked up. She smiled first. "Back in the trenches today?" Raymond gave a quiet nod, stepping farther in. "Thought I'd see if your Jenkins pipeline still hates me." "We rewrote the whole thing," Logan said, glancing up from his terminal. "Didn't want to risk you debugging at 2 a.m. again." Raymond chuckled. He walked to the workstation where Jerome had once sat, and for the first time since leaving that chair behind, he sat again, not in disguise, not in hiding, just there. Across the desk, Monica appeared with a to-go cup in hand. "Thought you'd come by eventually." He took the cup and sipped. Black coffee, just as he liked it. "I owed this place one more sit-down, one more memory to overwrite the old one." Monica leaned against the edge of the table. "We've started receiving interview requests from other companies. They want to know how we rebuilt trust, how we turned it around." "Let them ask," Raymond said. "Just don't give them a checklist." She laughed. "No slides, no bullet points. Got it." Then she turned more serious. "There's one thing I never asked you." Raymond looked up. "When you spoke up that day, in the meeting, you knew what would happen, didn't you?" He paused. "I didn't know how far it would go, but I knew the system I helped build wouldn't protect me. It hadn't protected anyone else." Monica nodded, the weight of those words settling between them like shared ground. Later that afternoon, the final update of the Courage chain went live. It wasn't flashy, no announcement, just a quiet change in the interface edition titled, "The Ones Who Stayed." It was a collection of stories from those who had remained at ecosystems through the hardest transitions. Stories of choosing to stay when they could have walked, choosing to fix what had fractured. Each story was short, no longer than a paragraph, but each carried a gravity that didn't need embellishment. A line from one of Dana's entries read, "It wasn't the new leadership that made me stay. It was the feeling that I could become the leadership I had once waited for." Raymond read that one twice. Then he closed the terminal and stood. That evening, he attended a team dinner hosted in the Commons. It wasn't mandatory. It wasn't catered by PR. Just long tables filled with team members, paper plates, and food people actually wanted to eat. Someone played guitar. Someone else brought peach cobbler from home. At one point, Logan raised a plastic cup and said, "To the company that used to reward silence and now builds monuments out of voices." A cheer followed. Laughter, even a few tears. Raymond didn't speak. He didn't need to. He looked around the room and saw what he had tried to describe in boardrooms for years but never quite captured. Community. Not policy, not process, but connection, real and breathing. Later, as the evening wound down, he stepped onto the outdoor terrace, away from the buzz of the crowd. Monica joined him a few moments later. "You never announced your next steps," she said. "Are you really stepping back again?" "I am," Raymond replied. "But this time, it's not because I'm disillusioned. It's because I trust what's here." She studied him. "You'll still be around though, right? Quietly haunting hallways?" He smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe I'll finally fix up that community tech lab I've been dreaming about." She looked out toward the skyline. "Do you ever wish it hadn't happened this way?" Raymond was quiet a moment, then shook his head. I wish I had listened sooner. I wish I'd looked closer. But the pain, the reckoning, that's what made this real. We didn't just change the policy, we changed the people. And they changed each other," Monica added. As they stood in silence, the lights of the building behind them shimmered faintly in the glass. No longer cold, no longer detached, but warm, transparent, lived in. Inside, Dana was laughing with a new hire. Logan was still finishing off the last of the cobbler. Someone had pinned another card to the watch and listen wall. "He didn't save us. He reminded us we could save each other." Raymond saw it through the glass. He didn't point it out. He just let the moment exist. This wasn't the end of anything. It was what they'd been fighting for all along. A place where no one had to scream just to be heard. A company that finally understood. Justice isn't loud. It's consistent. It's quiet. It's human. And it endures.